So I've been on the PAC for a year and a bit now. It's seen as one of the most important select committees in the Commons, and it's one of the most important select committees in the Commons because it has probably a role which is wider than some of the other select committees that look just at health. Well, it's not just at health, but look at health or social security. But this has a remit across government to look at value for money, and it means that we meet more regularly than the other select committees. We often have a much broader scope of work, and we have to get through that work very quickly. We publish the best part of, I think, since in the latest parliamentary session, we were at about 50 or 60 or so reports, which just demonstrates the breadth of what we've been doing. And one week we can be doing something as varied. I mean, yesterday, for example, we were doing transportation in the southwest and where we were spending money and how that was important for local communities in the southwest. And then just before recess, the previous one, we were talking about the emergency services network and an overspend of several £billion. So there's some really disparate things we talk about, but it's very much focused on, is this money being spent well? Is the government acting in the way that people outside Parliament would be interested in? And are we holding to account both the civil service and the ministers involved? So I think the PAC is really important. I mean, it's a select committee usually over 150 years old. It's got a very clear remit. It's a remit which is very much focused on value for money. But also I'm always been quite interested in the fact that as a normal member of the PAC for about a year or so, the amount of engagement that I get from members of the public. So there's clearly people watching, there's clearly people very interested in it. And what Meg Hillier, who's the current chair, has done over the past 3 or 4 years since she's been chair, is she's appointed lead members. So we get as ordinary, quote unquote, ordinary members of the PAC, we get to gain a skill, a specialism, and deeper knowledge of an area. And so, for example, for me, over last year, it's been Home Office large IT projects, and so we know that when the civil servant comes for the 8th time in one example, that he's not being asked the same questions as he was the other 7 by new people. We're actually getting into the detail very, very quickly, and then you get this engagement with people outside the PAC, whether it be interested bodies, people who are working in the area we're talking about, people who are just watching the PAC, who feed back lots of information about what they think, and also often they have information about which we don't know about, so it's very useful from that perspective as well. The point of public accounts is that we are looking at value for money. It doesn't matter whether we're looking at value for money in Europe or Asia or Africa or any of the overseas territories, because we're doing essentially the same thing. We are working out whether government is spending money properly, whether the civil service around that government is operating in the correct way, and whether ultimately people are getting value for money in their tax pounds that are being spent. And so it's really useful for me to understand how that works elsewhere. We can gain information and ideas and thoughts and approaches which we hadn't necessarily thought about, and I hope other people in other PACs can do the same, because often, particularly when in the UK PAC, where we're going through at such a speed, twice a week looking at very different things, you don't have time to sit back and just think what you're doing. So finding ideas, hearing stories and views and approaches from other PACs is really useful.